Hi friends, this is Caitlin, and today I am sharing how I used up some of my scraps to enter into a really fun color challenge. So this is the current color challenge from My Favorite Things. It's Craft, Milk Chocolate, Lazy Day, and Prickly Pear. And I am a sucker for MFT's patterned paper packs. So I do have Lazy Day and Prickly Pear and those with the white polka dots from one of their paper pads, as well as some scraps of MFT's craft cardstock. And then to incorporate that darker brown, I pulled in this really nice darker wood grain. So those are going to be the ways I'm incorporating my colors into my physical card. And then as usual, I'm going to be using my hex chart to match up my Copics the best that I can. But before we jump into this card, if you have a second and you haven't already subscribed, go ahead and hit that button. And if you want, hit the bell so that way you never miss out on any of the fun crafty inspiration that I share every Friday afternoon with you. So I'm going to be starting out by stamping out these images, which are from MFT, and I'm going to be stamping them onto my Copic Express It paper, which is my ultimate favorite white cardstock for Copic coloring. And I absolutely love this image. She is so sweet hanging upside down, and I really thought it would pair in a really fun way with the Polaroid die cut from MFT. So I'm going to be using those together to create a little mini shaker element on the front of our card. I also love these very strange little birds that are part of the stamp set. So I'm going to be stamping out all three of them and coloring them in with a blue to try to match up with that Lazy Day. So something that's really fun that I feel like I've never heard anybody talk about is MFT always has these color challenges, and I'm somebody who likes to stick with those colors as closely as possible, even though they say it's completely fine if you aren't matching them exactly. It's kind of just using them as inspiration. But I get a little particular about it, and so I really love using the exact colors when I can. And so if you didn't know, when you go to MFT's website, you can actually search, and there's a whole list under each paper pad, and I'll link this below too for you so you can go directly to the page. But every paper pad, they have a list of exactly what colors are used in that pad. So I was able to look through some of the different paper pads that I have to see which collection actually had the Lazy Day and the Prickly Pear in it. And then I knew exactly what to look for when I was digging through my scrap bin, because I have so many of the MFT pads at this point that my scrap bin is, pretty full from those. So I trimmed down that piece of the Prickly Pear to be the size of my full A2 size panel. And now I'm cutting my wood grain cardstock down to 1 inch by, I think I did it at 3, let's see, I'm doing it the same with this. Yeah, 3 3/4. So I did 2 of the wood grain and 3 of the craft that are all the same measurements, 1 by 3 3/4. And that's just going to help me to have a nice frame around it. So I am attaching these to an extra scrap piece of white cardstock, and that's just to help kind of keep everything nice and straight while I'm building this little mini panel that's going to go in the center. This is what our shaker element is going to go on top of, and you could do this directly onto the Prickly Pear. I just thought it would help me to line up everything and make sure it was nice and straight without having to do a lot of extra work. So I'm just using a tape runner and adhering these down flat. Then I'm just going to trim off any of the white that could be hanging off, or any of the edges that might just be a tiny bit uneven, and now we have a solid panel. So I did pre-score a piece of white cardstock to be a side folding card base for myself, and I'm just adhering that Prickly Pear right on top. I did trim off a little of that white that was hanging off the edge. I usually have to do this when I make my own card bases. I always end up with a little extra cardstock hanging out somewhere. So I trimmed that off and then attached my middle panel there. Again, just flat, because that shaker element is going to be giving us a good bit of dimension, and so I wanted to keep everything else nice and flat. But I love how this green and white polka dot just gave a really nice frame around the whole card. The next step was making sure that my scrap piece of my Lazy Day blue was going to be big enough. And so I just held it up with the die cut. And then I'm also using this stitched banner die from MFT to cut out my sentiment, which came from that same stamp set, and I stamped it in the MFT milk chocolate ink. Again, just trying to think of more ways to bring in those colors for the color challenge. So I used the inside of my die cut from that Polaroid to just trim down my Lazy Day, giving it a little bit of extra room so that I knew I would have room to attach it on the back. And I was trying to decide if I wanted to do craft on craft or craft on the wood grain, but I really liked how it looked having my Polaroid a little more centered up and my sentiment further down at the bottom. So I ended up going craft on craft, and because of that I wanted to incorporate a little bit of dimension to help break up all that color. So I did use some of this very thin foam tape from Heffy Doodle, and I trimmed out a piece of Studio Katia acetate sheet to adhere into my little Polaroid there to create my shaker, but I wasn't paying attention to my original design, which was that I wanted to tuck my little girl half in and half out. So you're gonna see that I adhere the whole thing, but then I end up prying the top up, and I just put the die inside to help keep it from adhering back down while I got my coloring done, and then we'll put her in place. So I grabbed some B90 markers to color in my little birds, a little B23 for a transition, and then I go back to the B90s. I just thought that these kind of more powdery blues really went well with the Lazy Day color scheme, and I wanted to incorporate all those colors as much as I could into my coloring. So I also gave her some denim shorts, which I just thought was the perfect way to incorporate this blue. It's a very denim blue. And then I grabbed some really pretty kind of pear, limey, citrusy greens, and I used those for the stripes on her shirt as well as the leaves on the tree. Again, using my hex chart to match up the coloring as best as I could to my prickly pear and Lazy Day color scheme. So I decided to give her a little bit of that chocolate color on the tank top part of her shirt as well as in the tree, and I just used some of the same colors but incorporated a little more of the deeper colors in the tree and the lighter colors in those families for her shirt, and I'll incorporate those same exact colors in her hair as well. I just find for color challenge cards specifically that the more often I can use those colors, the better everything looks, and it just creates a much more cohesive effect. So I'm going in now to color in her skin tone, and I will make sure that I have all of my Copic color choices listed down in the description box below for you, because I know they go pretty quickly. My coloring is definitely sped up a lot on here, and so I want to make sure that if you fall in love with a color combination that you see, or it's something you want to try out, that you can find exactly what I use. So I'll have those listed down in the description box for you always, as well as some of the links to the products that I used today. Just know that some of those are affiliate links, which means that if you decide to make a purchase after using that link, it does support me and my channel, but it doesn't cost you anything extra. I just want to be really transparent about that, and I definitely appreciate anyone who has used my links to make a purchase, because, you know, when you're growing your channel and starting off on the smaller side, every little bit helps, and we are so close to that 1,000 mark for subscribers. I just feel absolutely blessed to be a part of this community, and I'm so grateful for everybody that takes the time to watch and leave comments and hang out with me. So I am using my little coordinating dies. I'm just attaching them down with some washi tape, and I'm going to run that through my die cutting machine, and then it is going to be time to start adhering this whole thing together, which once it comes together so quickly, and I think it just looks absolutely adorable. So since I had that acetate sheet pulled up, I was able to tuck the tree branch kind of behind the white paper and keep her hair in the front. So that's what I meant by having, you know, some of it inside the picture frame and some of it outside. I really wanted it to look like she was kind of swinging out. So I just added some adhesive to her hair and stuck that down to the white part of that Polaroid and added that little kind of the bird that doesn't have any feet to the bottom of her Polaroid. And I'm using that same very thin, as far as width, foam tape from Heffy Doodle to the sides to create my shaker element. I really like this foam because it is a little bit thicker height wise, enough that my shaker pieces really had a lot of room to move around but it's so thin width wise that it was really easy to use for this frame. So I had this in my stash for a long time and I haven't played with it before, and it is quickly becoming a favorite for me. So I'm also grabbing this Pink and Main anti-static tool, and I'm just running a little bit of that around my foam before I take off my backing paper, just to make sure that all of my pieces are moving around the way I want. And then I grab some of these confetti pieces that are just kind of mirrored. They're so beautiful. They're from This Calls for Confetti. This is a new brand to me and I absolutely love them. They have the most gorgeous shine, and I will link them down below with the exact color name. So I am going to pop my little blue scrap piece that I trimmed down earlier into place as a backing. And I didn't really care that there was a gap there at the bottom, so I am just putting some liquid glue on the back of that, and I just kind of tapped all of my confetti into the top so nothing would fall out of that spot at the bottom while I was placing it. And once I was happy with my little placement of my Polaroid, I just pushed everything down and I tucked the other two little birds right at the top corner of my sentiment. And because I had that sentiment popped up, I decided to add a few more of those confetti pieces just around the sentiment to kind of tie in that shine somewhere else. And that is this whole card complete. So if you're ever feeling like you need some extra inspiration, definitely check out Lawn Fawn, MFT, Hello Bluebird. They all have amazing color challenges and theme challenges, and I hope that you're feeling super inspired today. Thanks for being here, and as always, happy crafting.